Hello, welcome to another IELTS lesson. In this lesson we're going to look at a very common topic for IELTS, for the speaking test. And that is the topic of, can you guess? The topic of homes. And today I'm standing outside a beautiful old English country home. It's really lovely here. Now, my question for you is from speaking part 3, so that means it's going to be more difficult. Are you ready for your question? Do you think it is better to live in the countryside or in a city? I would like you to answer that question. I want you to take your telephone, record your answer, and then check your answer and see how you can improve that. And please do this before you continue with the video, because now I'm going to go to the whiteboard and I'm going to give you some vocabulary and ideas to improve your answer. So record your answer and I'll see you in a minute. Here is your question. Do you think it's better to live in the countryside or in a city? Have you recorded your answer? I hope so. Now, let me give you some ideas for the countryside and for the city. And you need to think of advantages to living in one of those places. So let's look at the countryside first and see what advantages there are. The first one is a slower pace of life. And this means that life in the countryside often moves more slowly than in the city. It's often more relaxed, less stressful, and some people believe pleasanter. So that's one benefit to country life. Another advantage is less pollution and also less noise. The pollution is generally air pollution. Now, less air pollution and less noise in the countryside is because there is less industry, there's less traffic, less building work than in a city. And therefore it is considered healthier to live in the countryside. So that really is a big positive point. Another plus point to life in the countryside, and that is stronger communities. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, in the countryside, people often live in a town for their whole life. And families live in the town generation after generation. And that means that they know each other very well. And therefore, the community is quite close. And neighbours have a good relationship with each other. This means that the countryside often gives people a good support network because the community is so close. So that is definitely a plus point. The next advantage, now that depends on which country you live in. But in England, for example, in the countryside, houses are cheaper than in a city. So that means that they can have bigger houses, bigger gardens, there's more space. You remember the beautiful house from the beginning of the video. That was an English country house, over 150 years old. So the owner of that house couldn't have the same building if they lived in a city. So those are 4 plus points, 4 advantages to country life. Now let's look at cities. Maybe you prefer living in the city. Now, one definite advantage that the city has over country life is there are more amenities in a city. What are amenities? Well, another word for amenities is facilities. Now, the facilities and amenities that we're talking about are things like better restaurants, better sports facilities, more leisure centres, for example. Also, the transport is better, the roads are better. There are so many more things that you can do. There are cinemas, shopping malls, opera houses, many, many more amenities and facilities in a city than living in the countryside in a small town or village. Now let's check the pronunciation of these words. The first word is amenity. So that's 4 syllables. 1, amenity. This is a sound. Amenity. Here is the stress. Amenity. Amenities. So you've got singular, amenity, plural, amenities. The next one, facilities. Facilities. This also is a, and the stress is here in the second syllable, facilities. So the city has more facilities and amenities to offer than the countryside. The next positive point to city life, and that is in the city there are often better prospects. Do you know that word? Well, prospects often means opportunities. There are more opportunities for people in the city. The word prospects we often use with employment. And this means when there are better prospects, it means that it's easier to get a good job. So there are more jobs available in the city, more prospects, and more opportunities to do what you want to do and advance, get promotion and improve your life. The next advantage is very clear, better public transport. There are more buses and trains and undergrounds in cities. And of course, in the countryside, there is often very little public transport. People need their own transport to get around. But in the cities, if you don't have your own transportation, you can still get around and you can travel using public transport. And the last advantage, again, this depends on which country you live in, but in many countries there is better education in the cities than in the countryside. Nearly all universities are in cities. Often the facilities at school in the city, they are better than in the countryside. So, for example, city schools have better technology, more laptops and computers and high technology for their students. And the standard of education is often higher, better teachers. So there are 4 clear positive points to city life. Now, before we finish, there's something I want to tell you about this question. Obviously, you need to choose living in the country or living in a city. And when you choose one, you really need to compare it with the other. Because when you use a language of comparison, when you give a comparative sentence, it will help your IELTS speaking results. The examiner does need to hear a range of different grammar. So we say less and more or better. So for example, there is less pollution and noise in the countryside than in a city. There are often better prospects for work in a city compared to the countryside. So remember, when you give some ideas, that you need to compare them. Now, these are only 4 ideas for each one, Maybe you've got some more ideas. If you have, let me know. It's always good to share ideas for IELTS. Well, that's all for this lesson. I hope that was useful. And I will see you again in another IELTS lesson. Here are some more useful IELTS lessons to help you prepare for your IELTS test. Or connect with me through Facebook, Google+ or Twitter.